You've asked us to cover the effects of narcissistic parents on their children. So we sat down with Dr. Seth Meyers to explain how to spot the signs of narcissistic traits in your parents. Plus, we discuss how to cope with those psychological effects of having one or more parents with narcissism. All right, now narcissism may be one of my favorite, for lack of a better term, mental health topics. What is narcissism?
So narcissism is a personality disorder. The official name is narcissistic personality disorder. It involves a few central criteria. Okay. An overinflated, overt sense of the self. It involves lack of empathy at times with others. It involves a difficulty in relationships. So there are several things involved in that. Here's what's most important, though, with understanding a narcissist. A narcissist is not who they appear to be on the surface. Think about it like an astrological sign of a Gemini, right? There's two selves. That is who the narcissist is. So who the narcissist tries to appear to be on the surface. The image they try to sell to the public and to themselves, and then there is their underlying true self. Now, of course, anybody who really likes themselves, loves themselves, isn't going to be so hell-bent on proving to the world how great they are, how superior they are. So clearly, what they don't know is they're so much more transparent in some ways than they know. So there's the two selves. There's the false self, which is the self they try to sell to the world, and there's the real self, which is how they really feel. And deep down, there is an insecurity, a feeling that there's only enough love and attention, enough accolades to go around. So it's a bit of a chess game. You must do what you can to make sure you get as much attention as possible.
Got it. Now, before we talk about the implications with having parents who are narcissists, let's first talk about what a healthy romantic relationship looks like.
So a romantic relationship between two adults involves emotional intimacy. Now, to have emotional intimacy, what do you need? Vulnerability. You need to be able to say, I show parts of myself that even I may not like or be comfortable with. I admit feelings of weakness, feelings of uncertainty. I depend on someone else. I go to them. I lay myself down to someone in that way, and they do the same. So in a healthy romantic relationship, there's intimacy. Both people are willing to be vulnerable. Neither person ever cares about something called power. Who has more power at a given moment?
Yes. You mentioned being depending on the other person. In a healthy relationship, is it true that we also must have some independence in ourselves?
A healthy relationship, it's a mix of dependence and healthy dependence. I'll give you an example. A single person who doesn't have good relationships or is uncomfortable with relationships, one of the things you may want to do is consider getting a pet, getting a dog, for example. That teaches you through the practice of daily taking care of that animal that someone depends on you, and you actually come to depend on that person too. So dependence can be very helpful, just not depending too much.
Okay. Parents who are narcissists have children, and there are a lot of consequences that come from the child being raised by two narcissists. What is one of the big red flags that you could see in a person who might have been raised with two narcissistic parents?
An adult who inherently feels like they're not good enough, who beats themselves up, who questions their own value, who has relationships that are dramatic, where people treat them badly. In 99% of those cases, did that adult, when they were young, have a parent who unconditionally loved them? Probably not, because why on earth then would they ever say at 18, 20, 25 years old, hey, I'm going to totally change the types of relationships I have. I'm used to being treated great, being valued, feeling like I count, and I'm just okay the way I am. And now I'm going to actually go into relationships where I'm treated like crap, where I don't get called back, where I have to chase them, where I have to constantly wonder if they really care about me.
Because they had narcissistic parents.
So a lot of times if someone questions their own worth, doesn't have that self-confidence, a lot of times they had a narcissistic parent. Now they could also have had other issues. Maybe they had a trauma background and whatever. One of the hallmarks of someone who was raised by a narcissist is the overachiever who is telling themselves, if I achieve this, that, and the other, then finally I'll be good enough.
Is it common for narcissistic parents to raise narcissistic children?
It's a great question. So what a lot of the literature says is kind of depressing for children who are raised by narcissists, which is that if you are raised by a narcissist, you too may take on some of those narcissistic qualities. And it makes perfect sense when you think about it, right? In a parent relationship, that's the closest relationship a child has with really anybody, and the degree to which a child depends on a parent. So they are figuring out all kinds of things in that relationship. So it makes sense then if a parent treats a child in a certain disrespectful, dismissing, unloving, negligent way, that later in life that person would do the same thing to somebody else in a romantic relationship.
So they might behave narcissistically in a relationship, and they also might seek out somebody who is a narcissist.
Right. And think about it this way, Kyle. They should, right? That's what they were told.
That's what they know, right?
That's the narcissistic parenting program that they were taught. And they were the best little students in the world, right? So here's the thing. What is one thing that can break the cycle?
Yes.
Raised by a narcissist, you don't want to be a narcissist too. Get therapy. Get therapy, and that will help you gain some self-awareness. It doesn't need to be just therapy, though. It can be getting educated. Simply going online and doing searches for what is the effect of a parent who treats a child badly, right? So just getting educated. Could be a relationship you have with someone at the church. Could be a coach that you develop a close relationship with. But the really sad thing is, and it's just sad all around for a child who is raised by someone like that, because it's conditional. They understand from the beginning, don't get too cocky. You're not just gonna be loved. That's not a part of the deal. Now, you will be loved if you meet these various stipulations in the contract. Here's why that is important. Earlier, I was talking about the narcissist's two selves. There's the false self, the self they want everybody to believe. They even try so hard to believe themselves. And then there's their real self. What that means is, to the narcissist, image is everything. So when a parent has a child, what does it mean that child is? The child is what we call a narcissistic extension of the parent. So that child fails in school. That child doesn't live up to the image the parent wants the overall family to represent. The child will be criticized, shut out, frozen out, dismissed, disowned. It's really sad, but at the end of the day, it's not a tragedy as long as the person who was raised like that talks to friends, is honest about their feelings, because objective people will give them feedback. Hey, what the parenting you got, it was messed up. It wasn't right. See, the child who was raised like this, they don't have that healthy editor.
Right.
They were not allowed to be angry.
Right.
They were not allowed to be resentful.
Or screw up.
That's right, or screw up.
Do you think there are more narcissistic parents today than there were 50 years ago?
Well, in terms of generations, I would say that, you know, we talk about millennials these days, right? The attachment, the obsession, the attachment to electronic devices. It's a very unique relationship. Notice it's the individual having a relationship with something that's not a person.
Yeah.
So I would suggest if there are any generational differences, we may see it in decades in the future where, you know, parents get off your devices and actually connect with your child, you know?
When someone's watching this and they think, you know, I just had the realization that I likely had narcissistic parents, and they are going to seek treatment for themselves or reach out to, like you said, friends or coaches to get honest feedback. At any point, should they go back to their parents and address it with them?
Well, again, that's a really good question, but the question gets to the root of one of the hallmarks of narcissism, which is narcissism means there will be no self-awareness, no accountability.
Right.
So I'm your narcissistic parent. I just make you feel like you need to do what I say. You need to be better. You can call me out on things I've said or done. I will never take ownership of it. I cannot allow that. Now, what's happening underneath it all psychologically is the narcissist, this is unconscious. They have fought for so long to build up these strong defenses. They can't let themselves think there's anything wrong with them. They can't even let it in. They are afraid if they acknowledge one little flaw or one thing they did wrong, that will open up the floodgates and then they will be targeted and attacked. What's so sad is narcissists are not evil people. Narcissists, they were actually victims too. Someone taught them that in close interpersonal relationships, there is something called power. What? Like, where did that ever come from? But that exists in relationships with people with personality disorders. What does exist, of course, there are differences between parent and child. The parent is the authority, but that's different from the powerful one.
Yes.
The person in authority also has the responsibility of protecting, of setting aside their own feelings, acknowledging the differences in their child. All these things are absent in the narcissist. But what people need to remember is just because you have a narcissistic parent doesn't mean that they are a bad or evil person. I promise you, if you look deeper at the relationship they had with their parents, it wasn't probably so great either.
And I want people watching this who think, well, maybe I have narcissism. It doesn't mean you are a bad person. If anything, this is a great opportunity to use this information, go the next step and get therapy and make some changes to just make your life better. I never like the stigma of a label, you know, because that doesn't do anything. All it is it gives us information to take the next right steps.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we are all works in progress, you know.
Yes.
It is never too late to change. And the most impressive, the happiest, the most powerful people in this world, they are actually people who can say things like, I don't know, or did I mess that up? Yeah. A little vulnerability, a little humility, you know. So let's go for a mix. Let's not always try to be so strong, to win, to let everybody know we're boss. You'll have much better relationships, much more peace in your relationships if you can give out a little vulnerability and you also accept it in others when they show it to you.
Yeah, that just makes me feel so good. I'm going to work on being more vulnerable. I think that's something that I can do.
We all have to,
we all
right?
can,
I do
right?
too.
Yeah, of course. I want to end with this question. If a loved one or a friend has a pattern of seeking out romantic relationships with a narcissist, what can that person do to help their friend?
So if you see somebody who is suffering in romantic relationships, who is routinely going for people that make that person kind of feel like crap, you don't need to say many words at all.
Okay.
Right? You don't need to educate them in a 30-minute monologue. It's just saying simple things to get them to see for real how they feel at root, which is this relationship making you feel good? Or is this what relationships are really for? Aren't relationships supposed to be sources of comfort, not stress?
Yeah.
Yes, relationships can be stressful, but overall, aren't they supposed to build us up?
Yeah.
Not tear us down. You know, and you give, all we all need in our lives is someone to give us not 25 sentences of advice, but just little nuggets that then we can go, get in our car, close the door, drive home for that whatever 10-minute drive, and think about ourselves. And that's where the clicks happen. We just need a little nugget. So give someone you care about a little nugget. Are you sure this is working for you, honey? I really think there is something better for you out there.
Yeah, I love that. I love asking a question is also way less aggressive than
and judgmental.
Judgmental.
That's
Could you ask what would your ideal relationship look like, and after they explain it, say, and are you getting that in this relationship?
It's a version of something I would recommend.
Okay.
A way of tweaking it is, I would say, when you think about the relationship when you were little, think back to like when you imagined as a grown-up the kind of relationship you'd have.
Yeah.
When you pictured that person, what's the main feeling you hoped that person would make you feel?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guarantee you it won't be the feelings they're feeling in this relationship, right? Do you feel safe in this relationship? Does this relationship make you feel secure? It is possible, you know? And one of the things that I say to my patients is, you may not be ready now, but there may come a day where you say, you know what? I'm gonna actually just surrender and give up and say, I'm actually just gonna let myself be happy.
Nothing else to say after that. Perfect.